Faraway Paladin or Saihate no Paladin is an absolutely delightful Isekai manga, and you don't have to read that far to see why. Faraway Paladin takes couple of common Isekai tropes and gives them just a bit of spice, and do all of this with a pretty generic story that is equal parts Hobbit and Japanese Isekai. Welcome to this self-indulgent video where I praise my favorite Isekai and give you hope. Hope that there are actually good Isekais being made. If you know, then don't worry, we will get to that, and show you why Isekai works at all. We've got everything: heroic characters, paladins, elves, dwarves, religion, gods and goddesses, demons, suicidal thoughts, dragons, wyverns, found families, imposter syndrome, and even tall tales and singing. What better time to start reading or watching Faraway Paladin since Season 2 just got announced, and while I have problems with the anime adaptation of the first two arcs, which we will get to as we go along, but notice that Will and I are praying that they won't make the dragon terrible CGI in the second season. I hope you join in that prayer too, and let's hope that this series gets what it deserves. I should add that I will be spoiling stuff from the first two arcs, or the first season of the anime. Some minor spoilers for the second season of anime as well, but I will call them out when we get there. So know that if you want to go completely blind. Let's hop in right away and talk about the first arc that you're likely the most familiar with. The Boy in the City of Dead. And I'm putting it out there. This is the best opening arc in any isekai I've ever read and watched. Even on multiple rereads over the years, it still manages to make me tear up at key moments, and it's a must-read for any isekai fan, and a very strong recommend for any high fantasy fan in general. The arc in the manga, which I prefer, is only 14 chapters. In the anime it is the 6 episodes, and if you're into light novels, the first light novel volume is just bit over 200 pages. You can read or watch any of those and come to a satisfying conclusion, but do keep experiencing it since there are great moments in the later chapters. Our main character, William, is reborn as a baby and wakes up to his horror that there are undead gazing at his body. Turns out the undead are not here to devour him, but they take Will to their home and raise him as their own. Will learns to fight, pray and magic from the famous heroes that reasons unknown to us yet are undead. The start of the arc is a really big comfy slice of life fantasy story with Will pondering the philosophical meaning of words and bonding with his found family and really growing attached to them. But there is something amiss as we keep experiencing the story. What is also amiss is that the isekai part seems to be rather downplayed, and that is one of the common criticisms I hear from people. I just want to tell you that they are full of shit. While the past memories of Will are not brought up often, when they are, they hit hard. I'm also getting ahead of myself, so let's talk a bit more about our undead cast. Our undead family lost their mortal bodies after a certain bargain that I will not spoil to you, but Blood, our barbarian, lost his muscles and became a skeleton. Mary, the mummy, became a zombie, an insult to life and her god. And Gus, our wizard, didn't live at all, so he lost his body and became a ghost. They got Will and raised him as their own and try to guide him towards living a good life. But there is something amiss, especially with Gus, when he seemingly takes things way too far with Will. While this gets resolved and the slice of life hijinks continue, there is now a looming threat over everything, and until the very end of the arc, Will and us are not told what that is. I said I would not spoil the deal with the undead curse, but I will now. So go ahead, skip this part if you don't want to hear it, and want to go completely blind. This all comes ahead when Will passes his final test, and Blood and Mary explain to Will that they lost the decisive battle against the demon lord and made a bargain with the undead god, Stagnate. In exchange for their bodies and their souls, Stagnate banished and sealed the demon lord and his army and made Blood, Mary and Gus eternal guardians of said seal, with the only demand that if they ever value something more than the seal itself, Stagnate will come to collect. Then at that very moment, Stagnate appears to take away Blood and Mary, only to be seemingly stopped by Gus, but to no avail. Stagnate makes a deal with Will and awaits for him the next night to settle everything. Before the big fight, Will absolutely breaks down in an emotional outburst to his new family, ugly crying and everything, telling about his past life and how he does not deserve this new life, only to be scolded by Mary to not talk about such nonsense and live on as her son. This moment really hits, and it's arguably the greatest moment in the entire arc. The raw emotion you get from Will and Mary and Blood and Gus is something you don't see very often. After all this, Will takes fight to stagnate, and I won't spoil the details since it's best experienced yourself, but they manage to defeat stagnate. But Mary and Blood are lost. Will has his final moments with his new parents and buries them. Gus manages to hang on to his life, unlife I guess, and be around for 10 years, which is the same span of time that it takes for stagnate to lick his wounds and come back for what is his. Will departs to head out to become an adventurer and bring his goddess's word to others. That ends our first arc, and what an arc. The boy in the city of dead is absolutely amazing, and I don't have any issues with it. It goes surprisingly fast and sets up motivation for our main boy Will and gives sense of urgency and a call for the future. You owe yourself to give it at least a chance, and it feels like a completely coming-of-age story, and you don't have to keep reading if it doesn't hook you. The following arcs have their ups and downs, but enough dilly-dallying, and let's talk about the second arc, and the last 6 episodes of the first anime season, The Archer of Beast Woods. I feel bad for this arc, in particular since it's hard to come back down to earth after taking down a god, and still have the rising stakes. But I think this arc manages to do a couple of things right that really throws a bit of a curveball compared to normal isekai tropes. So instead of me going play-by-play retelling of the story, I will talk about what worked for me in this arc. And let's start with the following. Unlike in other isekai, Will's party does not have any women in it. Wait, that came out wrong. But hear me out. You have to take this in proper context. Usually the first 1 or 2 companions in isekai are the main female love interests for the main character. Sometimes both, and that tends to be the only character trait of said characters. They are in love with the main character, and the story keeps going, will they, won't they, for 200 chapters. The story even calls this out in the third arc, so look forward to that anime onlys. Of course, there is Robina and Anna, but they're both secondary characters compared to the main group. I talk about Anna a bit later, but Robina is a cute hobbit bard that is a joy to be around. She tells tall tales about Will and his accomplishments and rarely takes part in the actual adventure. One exception is the short story when she and Will enter the magical library, and she has the same idea about magic as Coco from Witch Hat Atelier. That makes her the best character. Still, I would like to see someone like Marcel from Dungeon Messi or Vamirio from Helk in the main adventure party. That is one of my critiques of the story, and well, the party is missing a dedicated spellcaster, so it should be a slam dunk. My other critique is that once again in a fantasy setting, dwarves, dragons, undead and manticores are fine, but people of color are still a bit too unrealistic for the setting. That would totally break my immersion. The party consists of Menel, an elf archer that is absolutely dependable to Will and is a great character in his own right. He opens up to Will pretty early and they form a great friendship. Another character that joins the party is a swordsman called Reustov, stoic man that is very similar to Aragorn without the kingly aspiration. That there is also another character that has more direct comparison to another Tolkien character, but none of them are as well written yet. Let the author cook, and Reistov gets more development in the volume 4. At this point in the story, he is a bit one note. The other switcheroo that the story does is to make the church not evil. Bishop Bagley is a prime bait for a villain arc, but turns out to be a red herring, and generally a very pragmatic man. In a lesser story, the church would be revealed to be working on some secret weapon or other nonsense, but nothing here. I guess it says something when the church, being just morally good institution, breaks your expectation of it. Bagley also has an adopted daughter, Anna, the one I talked about earlier. I won't spoil stuff about her, but if you felt that she was a bit one-note in the anime or even in the manga, then you're not alone. She gets development in volume 4 of the light novel, which has yet to be adapted in either manga or anime. So if the second season stops before that, then you will most likely be left disappointed. She is fine though, but she doesn't have much to do, except one thing which I will not spoil. Highlight of this arc for me is the moment when Menel almost gets killed by a manticore, and Will has an absolute breakdown when he sees Menel and gets yelled by Robina. Looking a bit like Stagnate here, Will. If you don't remember that from the anime, then yeah, Robina never lashes out on Will, and that makes the scene have less emotional impact. Maybe it's a closer to the light novel version, but if it is, then the manga made the correct adjustment, and it saddens me if the anime just followed the light novel to the T. This keeps happening to my favorite series, where the anime adaptation changes stuff from the manga for the worse. Hashtag justice for Dumbhire. Also my second favorite moment is when Will just fucking suplexes a wyvern. That's great. Will has a breakdown to Menel, but Menel ain't having none of it, and beats some sense to Will. They regroup and take down the manticore, and our second arc ends here. The Arche of the Beechwoods is unfortunately sandwiched between two great arcs, and it's not completely its own fault. It's still fine read, and it does set up things for the future. Solid arc that you might not get as much out of as I did, but still a fine bridge between the first arc and the next arc, which the new anime season will adapt. The Lord of the Rust Mountain. Now, I will spoil a couple of things about the second season, so go to here if you don't want any spoilers. The quest for this arc is to take down a mighty dragon in the mountains that banished all the dwarves living in there. Sounds familiar, right? If that's not too on the nose, and another character joins the party. Dwarf named Al, who is almost like Thorin Oakenshield without the confidence. He is great though, and has a lot of highlights during the arc. I want to keep this as regular as possible, but Stagnate reappears in this arc as a weekend herald to try and tempt Will to join his side willingly. Quote the Raven, but Stagnate and the Dragon are absolute highlights of this arc. Both are absolutely devious and over-encompassing during the entire arc. I don't want to spoil anything more for the third arc, so let's move on to the conclusion. If you don't want to read the light novel or the manga, then the upcoming second season is a recommendation from me. Go in knowing that you're watching an Isekai adaptation of The Hobbit and have a good time. There is unfortunately something that I've kept hidden from you about the author. No, it's nothing heinous. He is not a shonen author, thank God. The author has mentioned that he has had a writer's block for years and has only recently started to work on the series again, while currently Volume 4 is still unadapted, so there is that to look forward to. But I do wish the author the best. Even if nothing else, Faraway Paladin stands out as a great fantasy story on its own, and what we already have is absolutely amazing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all the next time.